The roses were still in my hands when my husband told me he was leaving me for another woman. What made it worse was the way he looked at me. Not ashamed, frightened, or conflicted. He looked relieved. And when he said my dead parents had already secured his future, the woman beside his suitcases smiled as if they had just won something. My name is Olga Rangel. I was 32 when my marriage ended in the living room I had once believed was our safest place. I grew up with money, but my parents never allowed me to become careless because of it. My father built a manufacturing company from nothing, and my mother managed every dollar until it became something worth protecting. By the time I entered college, they had created a large family trust. But my father always warned me that wealth could attract people who loved access more than they loved you. Money doesn't change people, he once told me. It simply gives them a reason to stop pretending. Because of my family name, I became careful. Some people treated me differently the moment they learned who my parents were. Others suddenly wanted to become close. Then I met Daniel Hayes. We met at a college party. He was funny, relaxed, and apparently unaware of my background. Our first date was at McDonald's. He stole some of my fries, made me laugh, and never asked why I drove a car most students could not afford. For once, I felt seen. Daniel refused expensive gifts and insisted he wanted to build his own career. When I offered to buy him a watch, he smiled. Save gifts like that for when we're married. At the time, I thought it was sweet. A year later, I introduced him to my parents. He helped my mother clear the table, listened respectfully to my father's stories, and insisted on paying for breakfast the next morning. My parents loved him. We married the following year. For 6 years, Daniel played the role of a devoted husband almost perfectly. He worked at an advertising firm, joined every family event, remembered birthdays, and acted uncomfortable whenever my parents discussed protecting him through the trust. That money belongs to Olga's family, he would say. I don't need it. Looking back, he never said he did not want it. About a year before he left, Daniel began traveling more often with his boss, Vanessa Cole. At first, the trips seemed normal: conferences, client meetings, corporate events. Then he was gone almost every other week. He started guarding his phone. He came home distracted. Sometimes he showered before unpacking. Whenever I asked whether something was wrong, he kissed my forehead. Just work. I believed him. Then my father died from a sudden heart attack. 6 months later, my mother died after a short illness. Losing them so close together destroyed me. I inherited control of the company while still struggling to get out of bed. I worked late, slept badly, and tried to carry responsibilities my father had spent decades mastering. Daniel said he understood, but he never asked how I was doing. At my mother's funeral, he held my hand in front of people, then spent most of the reception checking his phone. I told myself he was grieving differently. 2 weeks later, I left work early. I bought red roses and planned to suggest a trip, somewhere quiet where we could finally speak honestly. When I opened the front door, Vanessa was sitting in my living room. 2 suitcases stood beside her. Daniel came down the stairs carrying 2 more. He stopped when he saw the flowers. I was going to leave a note, he said. Vanessa stood and adjusted her coat as if she belonged there. What is this? I asked. Daniel placed the bags near the door. I'm leaving, Olga. For how long? Permanently. Vanessa looked away, but not before I saw the satisfaction in her face. Vanessa and I are going to Italy, Daniel continued. When we get back, I'll file for divorce. I stared at him. My mother died 2 weeks ago. I know. And you're leaving me now? This marriage has been over for a long time. I looked at Vanessa. How long? Neither answered. Their silence gave me the truth. Daniel reached for his suitcase, then paused. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be, he said. Your parents made sure I'd be taken care of. We can settle everything fairly. That sentence hurt more than the affair. He had not only betrayed me, he expected my parents' money to reward him for it. You think you're getting part of the trust? I was your husband for 6 years. Was? He looked toward Vanessa. You know what I mean. They walked out together. Daniel never looked back. I remained in the living room holding the roses while he loaded his belongings into another woman's car. That night, I sat on the couch until morning. When sunlight entered the room, the roses were crushed against my chest. I threw them away and called him. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. For 3 days, Daniel ignored every message. I went to work, returned to an empty house, and repeated the routine while questions tore through me. How long had he lied? Had he texted Vanessa during my mother's funeral? Had they planned Italy before my parents were even buried? Finally, I called Megan Price, one of Daniel's closest coworkers. Her voice changed when she heard my name. Olga, is everything okay? Daniel left me for Vanessa. Silence. She already knew. How long? I asked. I'm sorry. How long, Megan? Almost a year. My fingers tightened around the phone. A year. While my father died. While my mother became sick. While Daniel stood beside me at 2 funerals pretending to love me. Why didn't you tell me? I told him it was wrong. He said your marriage was already dead. And the trust? She hesitated. He talked about it. Daniel believed he would still receive money after the divorce. Vanessa said they'd have enough to start a new life. I ended the call. The next morning, I met with my family attorney and our financial advisor, Alan Mercer. After hearing everything, Alan removed his glasses. Daniel is not entitled to the trust. I stared at him. My parents discussed protecting him. They discussed limited spousal protection. It was conditional. Infidelity and voluntary abandonment removed nearly all of it. My attorney opened a folder. The trust remains separate property. Daniel may pursue certain marital assets, but he cannot claim your parents' money. For the first time since he left, I could breathe. Daniel had mistaken grief for weakness. Vanessa had mistaken silence for surrender. By the end of the week, the divorce response was being prepared. Daniel's access to company records was removed. Financial documents were secured. Every move was legal and documented. Then, on Friday evening, my doorbell rang. A man stood outside wearing a wrinkled shirt and an expression I immediately recognized. He looked the way I had felt when I found Vanessa in my living room. My name is Nathan Cole, he said. I'm Vanessa's husband. He lifted his phone. I have photographs, hotel receipts, messages, and financial records. My heart began pounding. They think they're coming home to your trust fund and my savings, Nathan said. But Vanessa has been hiding something from Daniel. What? Debt. A lot of it. Then he looked directly at me. And I don't think the affair was their entire plan. Nathan stepped inside and placed his phone on my kitchen table. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. We were strangers connected by the same betrayal, both trying to decide how much truth we could handle in one night. Then, he opened a folder of screenshots. The first message was from Vanessa to Daniel. Once the trust clears, we won't have to worry about anything again. Another read, Olga is too buried in grief to fight. She'll sign whatever you put in front of her. My stomach tightened. Daniel had replied with a laughing emoji. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. He had watched me struggle after losing both of my parents. He had seen me fall asleep at the kitchen table with financial reports under my head. He had held me while I cried. And all that time, he had been discussing how my grief could be used against me. Nathan slid another document across the table. These are Vanessa's credit records, he said. She owes nearly $200,000. I looked up sharply. How? Bad investments, personal loans, luxury purchases. She hid most of it from me. Nathan explained that Vanessa had been living far beyond her salary for years. Designer clothes, hotel suites, expensive dinners, and private trips had been charged to several accounts. Some belonged to her. Some belonged to their marriage. A few appeared to be connected to the advertising company. She told Daniel the two of them could start their own agency, Nathan said. But she needed money first. My money. Your parents' money. The correction mattered. Nathan believed Vanessa had convinced Daniel that the trust would solve everything. Daniel, in return, had convinced himself that 6 years of marriage made him entitled to it. Their romance had not begun as a financial scheme, but somewhere along the way, desire had turned into planning. Nathan showed me hotel receipts, photographs, and messages dating back almost a year. Daniel complained that I worked too much. Vanessa told him he deserved someone who appreciated him. Then the messages changed. They began discussing divorce, assets, and the trust. One message from Daniel made my hands go cold. Once Olga's mother is gone, there'll be no one left to interfere. Nathan watched my face. I almost didn't show you that one. I needed to see it. The grief I had been carrying changed shape. Until that moment, part of me had still wondered whether Daniel had simply fallen in love with someone else. Painful, cruel, but human. Now I understood something darker. He had been waiting for my mother to die. Not because he wished to hurt her, because her death made his plan easier. Nathan and I contacted our attorneys the next morning. We agreed on one rule. Everything would remain legal. No threats. No public humiliation. No revenge that could be used against us later. But legal did not mean gentle. My lawyer moved quickly. Daniel's access to shared investment accounts was frozen pending divorce proceedings. His company's security credentials were canceled because he had occasionally used my family business network while working from home. I changed the locks. I removed him as an authorized user from several cards. I documented everything he had taken from the house before leaving. Nathan did the same with Vanessa. He froze their joint credit cards and reported several suspicious expenses to her company's finance department. By the third day, their Italian fantasy began falling apart. Nathan received the first call. Vanessa demanded to know why her credit card had been declined at a luxury hotel in Florence. He told her calmly, "Because you used marital funds to finance an affair." She hung up. An hour later, Daniel called me. I was sitting in my office when his name appeared on the screen. For a moment, I considered ignoring him. Then I answered. "Olga," he said, trying to sound relaxed. "We need to clear the air." I nearly laughed. "You left me for your boss while I was holding flowers. I know you're angry. You don't know anything about what I feel." He paused. "Vanessa and I didn't plan to hurt you." I looked at the message Nathan had sent me that morning. "Olga will be too weak to fight." "No," I said. "You only plan to use me." His voice changed. "What are you talking about?" "The trust." There was silence. Then he sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "I'm not trying to take everything. I just want what's fair." "What exactly do you think is fair?" 6 years of marriage should mean something. It did mean something. That's why your betrayal hurts. "Olga, listen. We built a life together. Your parents wanted me protected. My parents wanted my husband protected, not the man who waited for my mother to die so he could leave with his mistress." Daniel stopped breathing for a second. "Who told you that?" I closed my eyes. He did not deny it. That was worse than any confession. "You're not receiving a cent from the trust," I said. "My lawyer has already confirmed it." His confidence vanished. "You can't just decide that." "I didn't. My parents did when they created it." Vanessa said. He stopped. "There it was," Vanessa said. I leaned back in my chair. "What did Vanessa tell you?" "Nothing." "She told you the trust was marital property, didn't she?" He became defensive. "She understands these things better than you think." "No, Daniel. She understands debt." Another silence. I continued. "Did she tell you she owes nearly $200,000? "What?" "Did she tell you some of her business expenses are being reviewed?" His breathing grew uneven. "You're lying." "I have the records." He whispered something I could not hear. Then he asked, "Where did you get them?" "From Nathan." Daniel swore under his breath. For the first time, I heard fear instead of arrogance. "Listen to me," I said. "Vanessa didn't choose you because you were special. She chose you because she thought you came with access to my money." "That's not true." "Maybe not at first, But read your own messages when you get home." He hung up. That evening, Nathan called. "They're fighting," he said. "How do you know?" "Vanessa called me. She accused me of poisoning Daniel against her." I looked out the window at the dark parking lot below my office. "Did she say when they're coming back?" "Tomorrow." Earlier than planned. Their romantic escape had lasted less than a week after the money disappeared. The next morning, I received 3 messages from Daniel. The first said, "We need to talk." The second, "You don't understand everything." The third arrived 20 minutes later. "Vanessa lied to me." I stared at those words for a long time. A week earlier, I might have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt tired. Daniel wanted to believe he had been manipulated because that version allowed him to remain a victim, but Vanessa had not forced him to lie beside me after my father's funeral. She had not forced him to message her while my mother was dying. She had not forced him to pack his bags. Daniel had made choices. So had Vanessa. And now, both of them were learning that consequences did not disappear simply because their plan had failed. That afternoon, Nathan sent me another update. Vanessa's company had launched an internal review. Several hotel charges and client entertainment expenses did not match the dates or locations listed in her reports. Some of those charges were connected to trips with Daniel. If the review found fraud, she could lose her job. Possibly more. By evening, Daniel and Vanessa were back in the country. I knew because the security camera outside my house sent an alert. A car had stopped at the curb. Daniel stepped out alone. He looked exhausted. His expensive Italian coat was wrinkled, and his face had lost the confidence he carried when he left. He stood at the gate for nearly a minute before pressing the intercom. "Olga," he said, "please let me in." I did not answer. He pressed it again. I know I made mistakes. Still, I remained silent. Then he looked directly into the camera. "Vanessa used me." That sentence nearly made me open the door. Not because I believed him, but because I wanted to ask whether he understood the cruelty of saying it. He wanted sympathy for being deceived by the woman he used to deceive me. "I have nowhere else to go," he continued. "Please. We can fix this." I finally pressed the speaker button. "You didn't come back because you love me." He froze. "You came back because the money is gone. That's not fair." "No, Daniel. What wasn't fair was leaving me 2 weeks after my mother's funeral and planning to live on her money." I was confused. "You were calculating." He stepped closer to the gate. "Olga, please." "Vanessa lied about everything. Her debt, the business, the trust. But you lied too." He lowered his head. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "The divorce papers will reach you tomorrow." His eyes lifted sharply. "You're really doing this?" "You already did it." I released the intercom button. Daniel remained outside for another 10 minutes before walking back to the car. As he left, my phone rang. It was Nathan. "Vanessa just showed up at my house," he said. "She's demanding access to our accounts." "What did you tell her?" "That the police are waiting to speak with her about the company charges." I sat down slowly. Nathan's next words were quieter. "Olga, there's something else." My chest tightened. "What?" "The investigators found transfers from Vanessa's company account." "To where?" "A private account opened 6 months ago." "Whose name is on it?" Nathan hesitated. "Daniel's." Nathan's words echoed in my head long after the call ended. "A private account opened 6 months ago. Whose name is on it?" "Daniel's." For several minutes, I simply sat there staring at the wall. I wanted to believe there had to be another explanation. Maybe Vanessa had opened it without telling him. Maybe someone had forged his signature. Maybe. But deep down, I already knew better. The next morning, my attorney called. "The investigators confirmed the account exists," he said. "Whether Daniel knew exactly where the money came from is still being examined, but the transfers are real." "So this isn't just about an affair anymore." "No. It's about fraud. Potentially." I thanked him and hung up. The divorce had started because my husband stopped loving me. Now it was becoming something much uglier. That afternoon, Daniel texted again. Please meet me once. Just once. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not because I wanted reconciliation, because I wanted the truth. We met in a quiet coffee shop where we used to spend Saturday mornings together. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Daniel looked exhausted. The confident man who had walked out of our house with 2 suitcases barely resembled the one sitting across from me now. He wrapped both hands around a cup of coffee he never drank. I know you hate me. I don't hate you anymore. He looked surprised. I just don't recognize you. His shoulders dropped. I never meant for this to happen. You packed your bags. I know. You looked me in the eyes after my mother's funeral. I know. You expected my parents to finance your new life. His eyes filled with tears. I believed Vanessa. I shook my head. No. He frowned. You believed what benefited you. Silence settled between us. Finally, he spoke. When Vanessa and I first got close, it wasn't about money. I didn't interrupt. We worked late together. You were buried in the company after your parents died. I felt invisible. You never told me. I should have. Instead, you had an affair. He nodded slowly. It started as an emotional affair. And then? Then Vanessa told me we could build a better life together. He laughed bitterly. She said your parents had already intended for me to inherit part of the trust. She kept saying I'd sacrificed years supporting you. I leaned back. So you convinced yourself stealing from me was justice. He covered his face. When you say it like that, because that's exactly what it was. He lowered his hands. I never wanted to steal. Then why open the account? His expression changed. I didn't. I stared at him. What? I opened the account because Vanessa said we'd use it for our consulting business after the divorce. You never questioned why money was already being transferred into it? She handled everything. Whether he was telling the truth no longer mattered. He had signed the paperwork. He had trusted the wrong person because he wanted the fantasy she promised. Daniel, I said quietly, every decision you made required another lie. He looked at me with red eyes. I know. No. I shook my head again. I don't think you do. He swallowed hard. I threw away 6 years. You threw away much more than that. I stood. He reached toward me instinctively before stopping himself. Olga, I truly loved you. I know. I would have gone through bankruptcy with you. He looked confused. What? If you had come home one day and said you'd made terrible financial decisions, I would have stood beside you. His breathing became uneven. If you'd admitted you felt lonely, I would have listened. Tears rolled down his face. But instead, I continued, you chose another woman, lied for a year, watched me bury both of my parents, and planned your future around their money. He couldn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I walked away. 2 weeks later, the investigation expanded. Vanessa's company confirmed that several client entertainment expenses had been falsified. Luxury hotels, international flights, private dinners. None of them had legitimate business purposes. Nathan officially filed for divorce. Vanessa lost her executive position almost immediately. Without her salary, the debts she had hidden for years surfaced all at once. Collection agencies began calling. The apartment she had leased after returning from Italy was repossessed within months. Daniel's situation wasn't much better. Although investigators eventually determined he had not initiated the financial transfers, his participation in the account and several signed documents forced him into months of legal interviews. His new consulting plans collapsed before they ever began. The relationship he had sacrificed everything for lasted less than 3 months after they returned from Italy. According to Nathan, the arguments became constant. Daniel blamed Vanessa for lying about the trust. Vanessa blamed Daniel for believing he deserved my family's money. Eventually, they walked away from each other exactly as they had walked away from us. Without trust. Without loyalty. Without anything worth saving. Several months passed before I heard from Daniel again. This time there were no demands, no arguments, no talk about the trust. Just a single email. I owe you an apology. I almost deleted it. Instead, I opened it. He admitted he had confused admiration with entitlement. He admitted he had allowed resentment to grow instead of communicating. Most importantly, he admitted that leaving 2 weeks after my mother's funeral would remain the greatest shame of his life. He didn't ask me to forgive him. He only said he finally understood what he had destroyed. For a long time, I stared at the screen. Then I closed the email, without replying. Forgiveness didn't require reopening a door I had already locked. A month later, the divorce became official. Daniel received exactly what the law entitled him to. Nothing more. The family trust remained untouched. Exactly as my parents had intended. Life slowly became quieter. I hired new leadership inside the company. I finally took the vacation I had planned the day I bought those roses. I traveled alone. Not because I was lonely, because I wanted to discover who I was without constantly carrying someone else's betrayal. One evening, while walking along the coastline, I remembered something my father had told me years earlier. The greatest inheritance isn't money. It's knowing when to walk away from people who only value what you can give them. Back then, I thought he was talking about business. Now I understood he had also been talking about love. Looking back, I don't feel victorious. Daniel and Vanessa lost almost everything. Nathan lost the marriage he believed would last forever. I lost the man I once trusted with my whole heart. There were no winners, only people forced to live with the consequences of their choices. But there was one thing Daniel could never take from me. Not my parents' company, not the trust, not the future they spent a lifetime building. He couldn't take the lessons they left behind. Because in the end, my parents' greatest gift was never the money. It was raising a daughter strong enough to walk away from someone who believed her love, and her family's legacy, could be treated like an inheritance waiting to be claimed. And that was worth far more than every dollar they ever left me.